Welcome to Policy Square by Primus Partners, where we unpack big ideas, solutions, and policy. Today's Policy Square promises to be a bit different. Our guests today in the studio are two Gen Zs, Krish Anurag and Yashmit Kedia. And I'm delighted to co-host this discussion with our Primus Gen Z, Sakshi.
Hello, welcome to the episode of Policy Square. I heard you guys have recently come to Delhi. How has it been for you in Delhi?
It has been fun. I feel like I get sick with pollution a lot of times when I come here because I have quite bad asthma, but I love Delhi, right? I feel like, especially with all the government stuff around here, there's nowhere else in India that really has it.
Yeah, that's
And then Gurgaon has become a startup hub now, so you get a good balance of both.
yeah. So Charu told me that you guys have a company called as Chimera VC. You have an investment fund wherein you fund early stage startups in gaming based applications. So tell us, a little bit about how it started, and especially for you, Krish. I know you're 19, so it's giving me a lot of complex knowing that
We are
you're
still
19.
catching our breath.
Yeah.
And he began his entrepreneur journey when he was just 15.
Yeah, so please tell us.
I started officially working at 14. I got into both sides, right? So there's the entrepreneurship side and the investing side, where in early stage venture capital, especially for your fund one, you're not in an investment company, but you have to run it like a startup. I've done about 12 angel investments since I started, all across tech. Did an Ayurvedic e-commerce company, did a hydrogen electric engine company out of Australia, and started that at 14. Got a couple exits, best of which was 13x in 13 months. And then used a lot of that as a platform to start the first company. So we built a gaming company in Web3, right? And this is all non-RMG, right? Everything we've done has been not on the real money gaming side, but on the traditional gaming or back-end technology side. So when I was 16, we raised about $1 million. I dropped out of school. I went full-time into the company. I built it for a year. I failed, right? Because Web3 and gaming had completely died, right? And there's nothing you can do about a market dying. And I remember thinking, what do I do with my life, right? I've dropped out of school. I've worked full-time with the company. I've taken investors' money. Now what, right? Luckily, no investor took a loss. We returned the capital to the investors. And one of my investors actually hired me out of that company. I packed my bags. I just turned 17. I moved to Bangalore alone, and I started working at the company there. I worked in basically building B2B and B2C for them, the engines, the back end. We scaled to over 1 million users in under 12 months. They raised money from Tiger, BNX, SquarePeg, and they're doing unbelievable now. 2 more subsidiaries under the company, and almost profitable. Then, just as I turned 18, I kind of combined everything that I had done, which is scaling a gaming company, building a gaming company, and early stage tech investments into a venture capital firm for Chimera, right? And the reason we picked gaming, both startups were in gaming, right? The one that I joined and the one that I built. And also there was a core inflection point in India right now without the right infrastructure of capital, right? So if you look at an ecosystem, there's only 4 elements to it, right? There's access to knowledge, access to capital, access to distribution, and access to talent, right? We had developed talent in India, and we had the grassroots of capital available in Series A+, but not as much in pre-seed and seed, right? We had very little knowledge sharing that was going on a global scale in terms of gaming. We were still very early into the market, so the trickle-down knowledge from previous founders was still limited, right? And distribution pipelines were here and there, right? Very, very limited as well. We could always draw off SaaS and consumer apps, but it's not a direct fit. So our core was to simulate that kind of environment that is there in Japan, right? That is there in Korea, that is there in US for gaming startups internally to our fund, and put capital behind it and use an engine behind that as an acceleration factor for the startups we invest in. And that was kind of the birth of Chimera.
From the co-founder, founding partner at Chimera to CEO Yashmit, tell us about the $25 million fund that both of you are building for India.
So I think the core behind that thesis is, as he mentioned, it's to help support founders. So we believe there are many amazing outlier founders within India who are actually building. So they have certain qualities which are like, they're extremely charismatic, obsessive, and they're very scrappy, because with the limited infrastructure, you really have to build something out. So currently my job is to ensure whatever Krish envisions, I kind of execute on that. So what we do internally is we try and go from a deal coming in to a deal going out within 4 to 6 weeks. And we like to be the first bet for those companies. And then again, as Krish can mention later, we have a couple of value adds that we do. And then into Krish.
I think in terms of value addition, we structure it down, actually reverse engineering it from what does a company need, right? So we ran a case study when I went to a bunch of startups and asked, what do you expect from VCs?
Yeah.
Right? And the traditional value addition that VCs will offer is advice, right? And strategy kind of will work with you on that. I don't think that's value addition, right? Value addition is actual needle moving objectives that end up with a change in either revenue, growth, valuation, etc. Right? Something that is actually comes out to a needle moving value driving for the company, right? For us, there's 4 elements of that: hiring, distribution, fundraising, and global partnerships and expansion, right? So we structured a lot of pipelines in the back end of that. We've doubled the revenue for 3 of our portfolio companies. We built 4 cap tables, including bringing Japanese FDI at pre-seed from a multi-billion-dollar gaming company into a first check hardware gaming company out of Kerala.
So tell me, what is the reaction of these early stage startups? Are they younger than you? Are they your age or older than you? How do they take to you giving them advice or providing them the support?
The youngest we have is 20, so older by a year. But we have founders all across the range, right? We have 45-year-old guys who are executives at big companies that have come out and started companies. We have a 20-year-old founder who is still in college, right? And building a platform, hopping between London and India and building a team here and there and the US to do it, right? And we funded him a few months back. So I think founders are all across the board. I think in the creative industry, there's so many different elements of it, and there's different founder profiles for each of them. Within content, it's a lot more of the younger innovators, right? Within infrastructure technology, it's much more of the experience, understanding guys. But the good thing about gaming is you see a mix of both in both areas.
You were still a teenager when you turned founder, right? What actually drove you to starting a fund? That whole entrepreneurial founder mindset when you said, okay, let me get out of formal education and get into business.
I have no idea. I kind of just loved it and was passionate for it. And then I was very, very lucky to be in an environment, to be surrounded by entrepreneurship because of my parents both being in the business world. And I would not have that base subset of knowledge that this is what I want to do so early without that, right? And I hope that this podcast can help with saying that these opportunities are becoming more and more available for younger people, right? Knowledge is becoming democratized. Information is going public.
To your previous question almost, we don't really feel that founders believe that him being younger is actually a bad thing. If anything, it's a good thing. Because our team is stacked with so many ex-founders that we actually are the core consumer for the products. So we are first-hand understanding what they are trying to build and can actually try and provide some insight onto that.
So when you say co-consumers of the products they are going to build, just elaborate a little bit.
So essentially, if it's a studio, they're building a game, right? I've been playing games since I was, say, 4 years old. I understand exactly how a gamer thinks and usually have been ahead of the curve in terms of playing the new games. So I understand what the core loops are and what would someone really like to see and how do you even monetize that, right? I feel like bringing those different perspectives. One of our people in the team had his own gaming social app. So he understands the community element behind that, right? So we kind of all bring together a variance of perspectives that allow us to actually hit the nail on every idea. So for them, it's not actually about age, it's about core knowledge. And I think we tend to possess that, so we understand them. And so they have no issue with us being on the cap table or even hearing or asking us for advice or vice versa, because we all are in the process of knowledge sharing and knowledge building.
So we call it boardroom and bedroom, right?
That's a really fun name for it.
So it sounds all very interesting. What are some challenges either for you or for, the startups, some bottlenecks which you would want to share?
Sure. I think I can go more into startups and you can go more into us. But I think in the startup side, I think when you're this early into a cycle of an ecosystem, a lot of the agnostic capital has still not warmed up to it yet, right? I think the second one, of course, is the entire RMG confusion today, right? Even though we don't invest in RMG, we didn't invest in RMG before the ban from day one. When we say gaming, a lot of the times the mentality is gaming is real money gaming.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll break this down a little bit for you guys for some clarity here. So within gaming, there's kind of 3 core elements, right? You have your RMG, right? Or your money-related gaming, right? Even Web3 would fall under this category, right? Then you have your content, which is your pure play Candy Crushes, Minecrafts, Fortnites, whatever, right? And then you have your infrastructure layers, right? Within infrastructure layers, you have distribution, which is your publishers. You have your technology backends, which is more like your SaaS companies or your AI development companies, etc. And then you have a lot of the ancillary companies that just flow around either core elements of creating or distributing, right? And this would be kind of the three elements of gaming. We've never done one, and we focus on 2 and 3, right? But in terms of an LP perspective, even for us and sometimes for fundraising for companies, it's tough. I mean, that's kind of some of the bottlenecks that we do face.
So what are some game adjacent applications that some of the startups you would be looking at would be getting into?
I mean, one of course is distribution, right? So you have your publisher plays, right? Then we look at hardware, right? We've done a deal in hardware. So we look at a lot of the AI technologies that come into optimizing users, right? In terms of monetizing users better, etc. We've actually invested in a game commerce company, which is actually almost doing what Instagram Shop or TikTok Shop did for social apps, and bringing an API to actually integrate that into any game within 24 hours, powering the entire backend of the store, using your in-game currencies, which previously were worthless, and creating extrinsic value out of them in a way that's not RMG compliant.
Oh, wow.
Right? They're actually raising now, right? One of our amazing assets. We've done a services company that does a back-end operation of some of the global IPs, culturalizing them for India, etc. But there's so many options within adjacent.
Gaming is almost like a platform before you can actually expand into some media and stuff. Right now, if a studio builds an IP, like if you see there was Riot Games, they had League of Legends. From that, they actually built a TV show called Arcane. So, I mean, the way it works is that the idea was that Arcane would actually help boost their revenue for the game itself. It did not. What actually happened was the show took off as an absolute independent IP and has been a front runner on Netflix, etc. Right? So it's almost like a platform to boost off, and then you can go into nearby kind of industries and business.
And vice versa, you know, I mean, a lot of movies have come and made game spin-offs, right? To increase their monetization potential. I think once you have a good quality IP, you can kind of do anything with it, right? It creates so much accessibility.
You know, before you walked in, Sakshi and I were chatting, and we were talking about, you know, when you took this decision to drop out, and both of you took this decision to get into the work here. What was the reaction of your family, your parents? I mean,
Yeah, because I can imagine my mom throwing a fit.
Honestly, I think it's much more simple for me than for him. They were actually very supportive. I had done the tried and tested path of, you know, corporate internships and like slogging it out, and I just wasn't happy. Gaming has been a passion of mine since I was, again, a young child, and I've been playing it seriously since then. So I've always had a dream of getting into gaming. What Chimera encapsulate is the mix of both of them. It's gaming and VC investing, which is my technical education background, and gaming my passion, right? So they were all for it. They were like, you put in your whole effort and something good will come out of it. And if it doesn't, we can figure it out from there. Don't worry. So they were pretty supportive for me, and I had a pretty easy journey.
Yeah, I also remember when we met very early into the journey, when we were figuring out whether it's the right fit for you, there was the big CFA question, which is, do I go and start? Or do I follow the traditional path for CFA, right? The truth is, it's tough to take that call. Right?
how did folks take it at home, and how?
Really a little bit different, right? So I was lucky because my brother dropped out 3 months before me. So both my dad's an IIT Kanpur guy, right? Very, very education first. Came out from a very, 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 very low income background, got out through education. And then he said, both my kids have dropped out before they're 16, right? My brother's actually a Formula 1 junior athlete. He's training to be one of the F1 drivers, right? He signed to one of their teams, Alpine, as a development driver. So that helped a lot, right? Because I could be like, he did it, now I can do it. So I was lucky because when I was raising capital for my first startup, they put in my term sheet, you have to drop out of school. And I took that to my dad, and I'm like, hey, I don't have a choice anymore.
Right? The investors.
Right? So they put in the term sheet was basically, the first line was, you have to drop out or none of this is applicable, right? So I took that to dad and said, we're raising $1 million, we got to start up. Let me do it, please.
How interesting, very
It
nice.
took a while to convince, but mom, when I came to her, even without time, she's like, yeah, go do it, go have fun.
Talking about dropping out and jobs and, you know, education, let's just switch gears a bit, and we'll come back to that whole entrepreneur education in school. But I'm very keen, since we were speaking of AI.
Yeah.
What's your take on, I mean, there's this whole, it's very dramatically being discussed. AI is taking jobs, is making jobs redundant. So what's your take? Is it making jobs redundant? Is it creating new jobs?
Especially from a young perspective. Like, since you guys are working in the field, you are seeing AI applications.
I can definitely start, but AI is a disruptive industry, but it's a necessity. It's almost like the reinvention of the internet, right? There is going to be changes. People's jobs will become less important, and they'll have to upskill. It's not a bad thing. It's just a part of life. It's an evolution, right? So there are statistics of 300 million jobs being lost within the next 2 years, right? But
What sort of jobs and in which sectors?
it could be as basic as, like, for example, now we have Claude Code, and you have Google Gemini 3, which you can use together to vibe code
Yeah.
any kind of product you want. For example, you can kind of almost mimic a SaaS company within an hour for $80, for example, compared to the subscription they might charge, which is $8,000 per month, right, or per year. So I think a lot of the sales people might actually lose a job because someone can recreate what they're building at 1/3 the cost. So it would push them towards actually innovation or lowering the cost of their product, right? Internally, that would have to have some restructuring within that. Software engineers, for example, also are becoming slightly less redundant because there are many new interesting AIs which can do your job for you. For example, Cognition has something called Devin, which is an AI software engineer. And I think that inherently will reduce the need for having so many back-end developers, especially in countries such as India, which is a services industry. We have so many of those. I think we'll definitely see a change, and people will have to change. But obviously, traditional vocational jobs will remain as necessary as yesterday, if not more. Plumbers, etc., even electricians, with the amount of usage that AI would do. So I think there are pros and cons. 300 million people will have to upskill in the near future to up and coming industries, but it's a way
So
of
let's say
life.
for AI management, what sort of new functions or tasks or roles would be looking at in AI, with AI?
So the true answer to that is nobody knows, right? Everyone has a different opinion on that. But I'll tell you the core directionalization that I believe we're heading in terms of AI, right? So the first thing, just to touch on the jobs point for a second, is that it is a concept called fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence, right? Fluid intelligence is your young, innovative intelligence. Your crystallized intelligence is your wisdom-based intelligence, right? Your wisdom-based intelligence, a lot of that can actually be automated out. So the truth is, somebody spent 40 years at IBM, right? And AI comes in, they are only able to do one core skill set of application, right? So these guys are stuck, right? They're in a really tough position, and that's what we're seeing today, right? New jobs will be created that we don't know, right? At the end of the day, we did not know that digital marketing would be a job when we were at the initial phases of the internet, right? But as technology will evolve, we will evolve, right? We're heading towards much more creative-based roles, creative-based ecosystems. And the reason why I feel that is because I think the emotional element behind creativity in AI is not anywhere near the standard it needs to be, and I don't think it can be, right?
So do you think people will, the thinking processes, thinking cognitive skills, with some part of the brain, like disuse of the brain, they will start atrophying, and thinking powers are going down with so much of Gen AI coming,
Yeah, just doing your assignments.
So there's two, right? So there's creative, right? And then there's trust, right? At the end of the day, AI can already do financial analysis better than us, right? But they cannot make investment decisions because at the end of the day, LPs will not trust capital with that, right? So there has to be somebody's head that can get chopped off if things don't go right, which is true, right? And the second thing, there needs to be a face that people will speak to. If you look at Web3, there's a Web3 company out of Abu Dhabi. Instead of sovereign wealth funds, etc., using platforms like Binance, they wanted to work with a person. So they'd become a broker for crypto, right? P2P for UHNIs and sovereign wealth funds, right? Because that human element of trust when there's large amounts of capital will always be there, right? And that nuance emotionally, that gut feeling, etc., that AI can't pick up, will always have a human element to it, right? And I think the moment a lot of that stuff gets automated out, we create accessibility for more people to be focused on that. Right? So we'll accelerate significantly in terms of innovation because a larger number of our population will be able to focus their mental efforts towards that.
So I wanted to ask a question now, since both of you interact, I'm assuming, with a lot of young startups. And like you said, today with Claude and with Gemini, you can use AI tools to code and essentially replace a SaaS company. So do you think, the ability for me as a young person to have access to these tools is making it easier for younger people to actually choose an entrepreneurial journey? Do you see a lot more young people entering? Because I'm assuming previously there would be hurdles. Like if I was 16 and I wanted to open like a gaming company and I didn't know how to code, it was effectively I mean, it was way more difficult back then, but now I'm assuming it'll be easier. So, have you guys seen a shift like this?
I think 100% because the barriers of entry have definitely become easier. I mean, the cost of develop is definitely gone down. So I would 100% agree with you that it's easier because there's also the aspect of side hustle. I mean, side hustles are very common right now in our generation. Someone is doing something, but on the side, they kind of build a project up. And eventually, once they're scaling that project, it just leads to more iteration failure because the cost of developing is so low. People can try and test. And eventually from there, if it doesn't work out, they lose almost nothing. They can just keep moving on their life, right? And once they hit something on the nail, they can build with that. So in terms of having the opportunity to do more things, I 100% agree with you that the cost of barriers have gone down. And I think that's kind of one of the core functions that we want to actually create at Chimera as well, essentially.
Picking up from that, what are the competencies between what even Sakshi was saying? What are the competencies you think, people leaving school and college should have for an AI-ready world or even early AI thinking?
You can't just study. You have to do first, right? I think the core that's happening a lot of the times is, I'll give a little bit of a pessimistic perspective, right? One, jobs are more difficult to get.
Yeah.
Right, we're facing a job crisis in the world, right? Second thing is hiring is becoming significantly more difficult, right? There is a weird complex that's going on that people won't hire first-time people without experience. So what the hell do these guys do?
There's also a lot of firing going on,
A lot of hiring and a lot of learning, right? But on the counterpoint on that, there's so much more access to knowledge for development. There's significantly more ecosystem. There's an abundance of capital, right? Very early and very late. We're having a little bit of a crisis in the middle, but there's a lot of capital available very early, right? So I think core competencies with that is people will fund people who are 15 in school today, right? I am lucky because I have a safety net. So it's not just competencies, but it's an ecosystem that you need to have around you, and you need to have actual hands-on execution or experience. Without execution or experience, if you jump out and take that risk, in all practical purposes, it's probably not a smart idea.
Talking about that safety net, that safety ecosystem, that safe ecosystem. So entrepreneurial mindset is a risk-taking entrepreneur mindset as well, or just a founder mindset, right? When you guys both, I mean, with experience, in hindsight, did school prepare you for that? Do you think, how can schools do that differently today? With young people like you coming out and setting up your own enterprise?
I mean, I think I did more schooling than him, so I can actually comment. I would say that more often than not, what you end up doing is not what you studied in school. So I think inherently, if you are studying, after doing what you studied in school, you're likely going to be in corporate. There is nothing innovative out of that. You might be in, say, a company doing investment banking, audit, consulting, something along those kind of corporate side.
So schools, should they do more simulations, Yes.
Simulation experimentations actually allow freedom. I was privileged to go to a very, very good school, but it also meant that our school was very structured, which is a good thing and a bad thing. It was very structured, it creates discipline and hard work, but it also allows a lack of room for freedom to actually test. I did not think I would ever be an entrepreneur. I had actually resigned to being in the corporate life before I actually met Krish truly. Because in my eyes, I was like, I don't have that ability to think visionary. I can think do, how, when. So I would definitely say that there has to be some change in curriculum or even opportunities in school that it's encouraged in some form. Right now, it's a very one-track mind. Indian school I'm speaking, you had science, commerce, humanities.
It's very siloed.
It's super siloed. So the question is, what can they do? Which I'm sure you'll have a better answer than I would as to what they can do. But I know what I would like for some form of encouragement or support, government grant.
We also joke that, Indians, there is, in India, you have this jugaad.
Yeah, jugaad mentality.
Yeah, the jugaad, like...
scrappy mindset.
Yeah, scrappy mindset.
I'll jump into a counter perspective here, where there's an element of disagreement I have with this, which is the fact that all of this makes sense if you know you want to be an entrepreneur. Right? All of these changes. But the truth is, most people when they're in high school don't know what the hell they want to be. Right? So, and the core behind... They don't know why they're studying. Right? And the core behind what high school curriculum is designed to is to give you 5% of everything. Right? So you develop core competencies across multiple areas and you're able to figure out what you want to do in life. Right? I don't believe the curriculum needs to change per se, although I think education on more relevant, up-to-date stuff is better, AI, etc. But I think it's more about the ancillary things that school can create for you to follow your passion in your own time, right? Because school needs to exist that way, because otherwise, how are any of us going to know what we like?
So, like, you think a base is necessary for you to build any? Fair. That, yeah.
Once you figure out what you want to do, then the ability to go deep in that needs to happen, right? You are not given that opportunity right now, right? But I don't think the curriculum needs to change in its core function, because its core is to turn you into somebody who can figure that out.
Yeah. So you still need algebra.
I mean,
100%. I mean,
I don't think
no.
See, here's the thing though, if you look back at historically, right, before the education system was built this way, 99, or I don't know what the exact number is, but majority of people ended up following whatever their parents would do. Because it was the only thing that they got educated in doing, right? That has changed right now because of the way that we've created multifunctional accessibility of knowledge, right? Which is where I see a lot of the depth and value proposition there. In university, I think people need to do more execution, right? Simple as that, right? You don't learn more than doing.
But I was sorry, well, just one thing is maybe exposure to entrepreneurs is actually something that definitely could be, because his point does make sense in terms of base knowledge.
So we can sign you up to visit schools and ecosystems to
100%. I mean, I think I'm...
Both of them in a bus driving across India.
a roadshow. Yes.
Yeah, no, it's just because I didn't have the idea of entrepreneurs, even though my school has some amazing like alum. We had like Muhammad Ali Jinnah and like really cool people from our school. We were never exposed to people coming to our school and giving us talks on potentially building. It was always one track. So I think stuff like that, exposing people, is aligned with what he's saying actually. So I kind of agree with him as well then.
So finally, you want to say something?
Again, I'm not normally a pessimist, but I'm trying to be more of a realist. I'm a bit too optimistic. At the end of the day, the tough part about it is everyone can't be an entrepreneur, right? And putting that dream in people too early, a lot of the times could be a really, really risk factor for their life, right? They can take a lot of risk. But
So access to capital, and a winnable solution, that story, that is important. So that brings me to our last part of this lovely discussion. Is your plans for India, the fund that you're building for India, how soon? What do you hope to achieve out of it? Where do you think this should go? And
I mean, we're live, right? We've done 10 investments so far. Internally, our deal IRR today is sitting on an average of 72%. We've got 95% of the market on inbound. We've got 100% deal allocation win rate, right? We were going to do a $15 million fund. We were actually going to do 6 to start with, but now we've just decided to increase to 25 because of the interest and the quality of deal flow and the LP accessibility that we're getting today. But I think the core behind India is, can we build this ecosystem, right? If you look at real winners in the VC space, they own their sector. Right? Kanwal is a perfect example of this with Fireside, right? He owns direct to consumer, right? And there's nobody better than him, right? So he became the North Star. If Fireside took an investment in D2C, then it's an investment that we need to invest in, right? Can we be that fund for gaming? And then eventually anything that ends up at user perspective, whether it's interactive media, consumer AI, right? If we understand the user is better, which is our positioning because of our age, can we own anything that ends up with our consumer base, right? And the businesses that power those companies, and be the default North Star investor that has significant value and depth of knowledge and understanding, but also in other investors' perspectives. The go-to, if they write a check, then we should write a check in this asset class.
And how do you reach that segment, and how do they connect with you? I mean, what's the roadmap looking like?
I mean, it's very simple. It's very simply just your investments have to do well, right? You have to make people money to have the credibility as a money maker, right?
And just to, if you want to reach out to us, please, you can find us on LinkedIn, anywhere you want. You just drop us an email. We'll be happy to set up a meeting within a week of reaching out. That's not a problem at all. We also have an incubator, which I think he should touch base on. It basically is the ground level ecosystem that we want to create for India. So like we mentioned that the grassroots for gaming do not exist. So we've actually created a program internally to us, which he can actually elaborate on.
Sure. I love him. He's always on marketing. Right?
And that's where I was getting.
Good mix. Yes.
So Level Zero, right, which is our incubator that we've launched it with Mixi, which is a multi-billion-dollar Japanese gaming company. Nazara, which is the largest public listed gaming company in India. And we've just brought on Google as a knowledge partner. goodness. Right? And we have 10, 15 phenomenal partners in the back end. I can't speak about yet, but they're being rolled out on our LinkedIn. On top of that, there's also 20 mentors, right? Including a healthy split of India and outside of India mentors that are all coming in to actually be part of this program and mentor the startup directly. A little bit of a different thesis compared to the traditional incubator. 100 days. Extremely high pressure, right? I tell the founders, like, we're going to kill you for 100 days, right? But you're going to come out of that at a bar of quality that is next level, right? And if you take the same thought that I had mentioned with the fund, every investment we touch, right? The core should be every company we incubate should have that same perception. We got to kill them for that, right? Otherwise, how do you really stress test anybody, right? But phenomenal infrastructure, $10,000 equity free, plus direct access to significant distribution and publishing and capital. Then the core, the main value proposition, we take no incentive for us, right? Zero first right of refusal, zero equity, and zero exclusivity. It is built purely for developing the ecosystem because somebody's got to do it, right? And if nobody is, then we'll do it.
And I'm assuming all of these are early stage startups.
So pre-MVP, right? Even before where we could traditionally write for the VC.
Oh, that's so cool.
I think Krish's vision truly is that before a founder has an idea, but if they know what they want to build in gaming, they come to us and we can actually help coach them through that to an interesting idea. I mean, that really is the dream because we want to be the name brand.
So even before that, right? If they just know they want to do something in gaming, before they even figure it out, we should be the first call.
Wonderful. I think
That's
that sounds
really
like
nice.
a wonderful design. And we wish you all the best.
Yes.
And
Thank you
looking
guys so much
forward
for
to
having us.
Thank you. Of
Thank you so
course.
much. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Amazing.